Hey guys and girls, how's it going? Alright, so this is my review of the Shadow of Mordor. So this game came out last week, I think it was, and I have been playing this game non-stop since it came out and just been having a blast doing it. So here is my review. I finally finished the game and here is what I think of it. So let's start off with the good. So there's a lot about this game which is really great and really fun. The first thing is the story is actually very interesting. The whole story premise is very interesting. It's set after the events of The Hobbit, but before the events of the Lord of the Rings trilogies. Within it, you play as the main character. His name is Talion. He is a ranger of Gondor, sort of charged with the duty of protecting the Black Gate. Suffice to say, at the beginning of the game, everything kind of goes peak-tong, and Talion ends up getting killed along with all his family. It's quite brutal, but yeah, the rest of the game, Talion is sort of stopped from crossing over and kind of brought back by this wraith figure, this wraith character, and the rest of the game, his major motivation is to seek revenge on the Black Hand and on Sauron for the death of his family. It's a very interesting story. Talion as a character is very great. He's very well voice acted by Troy Baker. His character is witty, he's funny, he's serious in points when he needs to be, but he's not sort of over brooding. Talion is broody in points, but his broodiness is justified because of the events that has happened to him, but he does kind of balance that with some very good levity and sense of humor, and that can kind of be seen with some of his interactions with the side characters. For example, Ratbag. His interactions with Ratbag are very amusing, hilarious in fact. Talion is a very likable character, I find, and I really enjoyed playing as him, and I very much felt invested in his story and really wanted to see it through with him and find out what happened in the end. All the side characters within the Shadow of Mordor are also very good. Gollum is there, obviously voice acted by Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis is just a genius, so it's really great to see him flexing his acting muscles within the Shadow of Mordor. That's really fantastic. Ratbag as well was one of my favorite sort of minions. I loved him. I thought he was hilarious. He's really likable for an orc. And of course you have the Wraith-like character. Now I'm not going to tell you too much about him because it's pretty big spoilers within the game, and he is sort of a key character in the Lord of the Rings lore, so I don't want to reveal too much, but suffice it to say there is a mystery around him, and during the game you kind of get these artifacts that piece together who this character is and where he stands in the overall grand scheme of things, and it's very interesting. So if you haven't played through it or you haven't completed it yet, I do suggest keep playing it. It's quite interesting. So all the side characters were very good, and I really enjoyed them. Now, what I really loved about the world that we sort of fight in is it's chock full of character. It reminds me a lot of the Arkham games in that way, in that even if your main character is not interacting with them, all of the orcs and Urk interact with each other, and there's banter going on behind the scenes. There are events and things going on behind the scenes that you have nothing to do with. It's simply based on the AI, and it's full of character, and it's really interesting and it's really amusing just to stop and listen and see what they're getting up to. Also, Talion's relationship with a lot of these characters is quite interesting, and they do develop as the game progresses. Even a lot of these enemy AI, they will remember their interactions with Talion. So for example, if in a previous fight you burnt them quite severely, they're going to remember that later on during the game, and that's going to become a point of reference, you know, a sense of bitterness with regards to that, and it will affect your relationship with them and how they interact with you, and I found that very interesting. I love the challenge of the enemy AI. I love the challenge that occurred when you actually died in the game. So throughout the game you kind of feel in a way that you're on you're on tenterhooks, and if you die and you're killed by one of the Uruk or one of the orcs, they will remember that they killed you, and they will learn from that experience, and they will also increase in power. and I loved that side of the game. In fact, I thought that was a fantastic idea. So many games now I feel are just too easy. If you die, there's no sort of consequence to it. You just learn from the mistakes that you made, retry it again, and Bob's your uncle, there you go, you're done. But I really like the fact that there was a consequence to dying within this game, which I thought was fantastic. If you died, you were punished for it because they increased in power and they were more difficult to kill, and you had to improve your gameplay as a result of that, and the way in which you were trying to take them out, the strategies that you were using. I thought that was fantastic, and I think it's a great thing that's been developed within this game, and it certainly is something that could be taken into other games in the future. I mean, think about stealth games like Splinter Cell, for example, and if you had to go into a base and stealth and take through this base. Imagine if the enemy AI learned from techniques that you were using, and if you failed the first time, they actually adapted their reactions to you and their interactions, and it became more difficult to actually complete that task based on what you've done. I think that has so much potential to it, and I would love to see this kind of area developed in the future for future games. Now, the best part of this game has got to be the combat. If you were to describe Shadow of Mordor, it is pretty much the love child of Assassin's Creed, Ezio Auditore, and Batman. It is their love child because it's such a mixture of the two genres. There's a huge stealth element to it, just like Assassin's Creed, going in and scouting out an area and trying to stealth take down people and control people by sort of dominating them and branding them and placing them in strategic points. But then, you've got the combat, which is so smooth and so fluid and has so much weight to it. It's very much, it feels so familiar but so new at the same time. It's very familiar in the fact that it is very similar to the controls that were in the Arkham games. You have your counter button, you have technically what would be considered your cape swish or your cape stun. In this case, it's your wraith stun. You have, you're sort of leaping over obstacles and dodging. You have your sort of dagger button or your shuriken button in this case, and then of course you have all your combos and building up a hit streak. You have critical hits, you have special finishers, ground pounds, you name it, you have it. But the combat felt very, very similar to Batman, and in that way it was nice because it felt so familiar. It was very, very easy to get to grips with. It was very, very easy to enjoy and to be good with. But the whole combat in itself, it feels like Batman because it does feel weighty. You feel badass, you feel strong. Some of the finishing moves are just brutal, and it does make the combat quite enjoyable. And that for me was kind of one of the highlights of this game. I really, really, really enjoyed the combat within this game. So that's the good, lots of it. Now, what about the bad? Of course, this game was fantastic, but there are things that were sort of weak with it and that were bad. In my case, I honestly think that the controls of Talion sometimes in his movement were a little bit fiddly in some places. They very much remind me of Assassin's Creed 2, where you would be pushing up, but Talion would move to the left or the right because the thumbstick was oversensitive. In some ways, it would take too long for him to sort of jump down from walls, or he would be hugging walls or hugging cover. It did make it frustrating in places for you to be able to move as stealthily or as smoothly as you would have otherwise liked to have done. So in that case, I felt that the movement of Talion could have been refined. It could have been much smoother than it actually was. But who knows, if there is a sequel, and I'm pretty sure there is going to be a sequel, I'm sure they'll go ahead and improve that. Now, for me, there's a lot of side missions in this game, and the side missions are good, they're interesting, and they are varied. There's a lot of sort of stealth missions and side missions. There's weapon-based missions. There's collectibles to get, artifacts to find. There's tons and tons and tons of side missions to keep you entertained, to keep you engaged, to keep you playing the game long after you finish the main story. But for me, the balance between main story and side missions was not well balanced. I would say there's about 50% of the game is the main story, and 50% of the game are the side missions. I don't like the 50-50 balance with with regards to that. I'm always going to be a story-based gamer, so I would have liked to have seen a longer main story campaign, maybe 70% of the game being the main story and 30% of it being sort of the side missions to level up your character, get special sort of weapons and runes, and collecting special runes to put onto your weapons, and that kind of thing. So I would have liked a better balance with regards to the side missions, but it does, you know, there is a lot of content in this game to keep you entertained, and you're definitely going to get your money's worth. Now, the main story for this was good. I will say that the main story was enjoyable for this game. But the biggest problem I did have with it is I felt towards the end of the game that the main story was actually a little bit too rushed. It felt like it wrapped up very quickly. The final boss fights and the final boss battles, I'm not going to go into too much detail because obviously I don't want to spoil you guys, but for me, the final boss fights were a little disappointing. They weren't as challenging as I was expecting them to be. The final boss fight was sort of a quick time event. I don't have anything against quick time events, but I would have liked to have seen different stages of that final fight. So the first part is actual combat. The second part might be quick time. The third part might be a stealth. I would have liked to have seen that final boss fight been done in stages. If you had played all of the side missions and you'd leveled up your character so he was uberly powerful, you wouldn't feel like you needed to do that in order to be able to take on the final boss. He was very easy in my opinion. So in that way, many of the side missions seemed kind of useless and kind of pointless to a degree, that you didn't really need to do them to be able to take on that last boss, and that to me is a shame. I definitely would have liked the end of the game to have been better. I would have liked it to have been longer. I would have liked the boss fights to have been more challenging, but I feel that that's actually a trend that's happening quite a lot in a lot of games recently, that, you know, the beginning of the games are good, the middle of the games are good, but the endings for some reason always seem to be really rushed. And I don't know if it's because developers are under a lot of pressure to hit those deadlines, and, you know, they're getting to that point in their development where the ending's not fully finished, not quite crystal, and they're just rushing it through to get it done. I don't know if it's because they wanted to leave the ending semi-open, because they're obviously thinking about the future and they're thinking about a possible sequel. I don't know if they did that because they're intending to finish it with DLC content in the future. Who knows? But for me, I would have liked to have seen that main story a little bit more well-rounded, a little bit more closed in terms of the ending, so that you do feel that sort of sense of achievement that everybody wants to feel when they do complete and finish a game. So that is pretty much what I thought of the Shadow of Mordor. Now, overall, this game was fantastic. I had so much fun playing it. I have to say that so far for me, Shadow of Mordor is one of the best games that has come out in 2014, and it's a fantastic game. I highly recommend it. I think this game is well worth buying at full price. It's heaps of fun to play. It's just a great game all around. So overall, I would give Shadow of Mordor an 8 out of 10. It's a very good game, highly enjoyable, and you're just going to get a blast playing it. The music in it's beautiful, the world that you're in is beautiful, it looks gorgeous, the gameplay is smooth, the combat's fantastic. It's just a good game, guys. So I recommend that you definitely, if you haven't already done so, or if you're on the fence about getting it, I highly recommend that you do get Shadow of Mordor and play it. Alright, so what do you guys think of Shadow of Mordor? Have you actually played the game? If you have played the game, please let me know in the comment section below what you thought of it. Let me know what you think of this review, if you enjoyed it, if you found it interesting, if you found it enjoyable, let me know. Alright, hit that like button as always, guys and girls, to show your support. If this is the first time you've seen one of the videos on my channel and you did like it, please subscribe if you want to see more. Alright, take care, have a great day, guys and girls, and as always, happy gaming!
Your power penetrates the mind, like that of the evil one.
My power gives us a gateway to defeating the Dark Lord.